You've all heard the expression, this next man needs no introduction. I think in this case, he really doesn't, but he deserves one. He's one of the most incredible men I've ever met. He is a man of passion. He is a man of vision. And he's a man who says he's not a self-made man. He always wants to make that clear. Everything he's done in his life has been because of the people around him. Right now, we are all fortunate to be together. And we were talking about this actually with soccer going on, or football, as you guys call it, the European Cup. We were talking about all the different teams. And we kind of came up with the thought that I thought was a beautiful sentiment, is today we are all united on Team Earth. And we're proud to have one man helping spearhead our vision for a safe Earth. Let's take a look at who this man is.
Come on, together, we will welcome you.
Climate change is truly our planet's pandemic.
Never ever give up. Keep on going.
He's a world champion bodybuilder. He's one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. He's been a governor, but most importantly, he is a climate action hero. Please welcome Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Proud to be here with you guys.
Guy! Anyway, President van der Bellen, Chancellor Kurz, ladies and gentlemen, it is great to be in Vienna. And it's great to be back in Austria, my home country. I love being here. And it feels so great to be with all of you again. I feel so happy that actually I should have organized a polka band to play up here on that stage to really celebrate all this. And I'm happy really to be among so many great people. But before I go on with my speech, I just want to say thank you to a few people. I want to say thank you to President van der Bellen for his continuous support for this environmental conference. Thank you so much. Chancellor Kurz, thank you very much for all your help and for your support. Monika Langthaler and her entire team that have worked 24 hours a day for the last few months, incredible. Thank you so much for putting all of this together. Thank you. Let's give a big hand to those people here that have been such supporters. I also want to say thank you to the speakers. We have some great speakers here today. And to the sponsors, because without the sponsors we don't have anything. And to all the guests that are here today. And especially I want to say thank you to Matt Eisman, who came all the way over from the United States. He, of course, is the host of American Ninja Warriors, big star in America, and he was the winner of the Celebrity Apprentice. And I told him when he won that event, with me hosting it, that he will be doing exactly what I tell him to do for years to come. So I've been sending him all over to do emceeing jobs and to work very hard, so thank you very much. Let's give a big hand to Matt Eisman also for coming over here. I'm happy to be among people that I admire so much for their dedication to a cause that is larger than themselves. I mean, you can't get a cause that is larger than saving the planet. This is why I love our theme, Healthy Planet, Healthy People. I mean, all over the world, environmentalists are working themselves to the bone, the heart so full of wanting to make things better, often even risking their own lives. I love them and I admire them. So although I may suggest that they're a new approach for our environmental movement, please do not mistake it for criticism of the movement itself. Because that's not what it is. It's just that I want to go in a different direction when it comes to communication. But let me go back to this clip that we saw earlier, the Terminator clip. You know, people think of the Terminator movies that they were just action movies. But there's actually a lot of philosophy in them. Take that line, There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. Basically, that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Because the Terminator movies portrayed the apocalypse of machines trying to control our lives. It was a frightening dystopian world. But there's one thing, and that is the Terminator movies did not dwell on hopelessness of a solution. No, they focused on human will and on human hope. At the time they were released, Terminator 2 and Terminator 3 were the most expensive movies that were ever made. Well, let me just tell you something about the movie business. No one is going to invest huge sums of money in a movie where there is no hope. Yet frequently, I hear environmentalists talking about the existential threat of climate change. The existential threat. We are going to be eliminated. And what does the public hear? The icebergs are melting, the rainforests are burning, the coral reefs are dying, the polar bears are starving, our cities will be flooded, and our farms will dry up, and our coastlines will be wiped out. And there will be famine and starvation, and people will be fleeing the heat and the rising water, and there will be wars. And by the way, don't use fossil fuels. Don't use plastic. Don't eat meat. So those are the kind of things that we hear. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating here, but is it any wonder that people are confused and tuned out? This movie doesn't have a storyline except constant alarm, which cannot be sustained. As a matter of fact, I just watched a webinar about entertainment's role in climate change. And there was one thing that came out very loud and clear, and that was, don't tell stories where people are stuck in despair. You see, to the public, the environmental movement is stuck in despair and confusion. I mean, we talk about all these different problems, but on top of that, we are talking a language that most people don't really understand. What are greenhouse gases? Aren't greenhouses those nice little structures where they grow flowers and plants inside with perfect humidity? What is climate change? Going from the Siberian snow to the Sahara heat, isn't that a change of climate? What about COP26? What is COP? Does anyone know? How many people know what COP stands for? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, there's over 500 people here, and there's 11 people that know what COP stands for, so that just shows you what I'm talking about. COP stands for Conference of Parties. But then what does 26 stand for? 26 of what? And what is net zero? And what is carbon neutral? And what is carbon free? And what is environmental justice? And what about this 1.5 degrees Celsius? That we can't go any higher of that. How serious can 1.5 degrees really be? And does everyone in the world understand Celsius? Because we in America, we deal with Fahrenheit. So all of that stuff goes right over people's heads. And they don't know, is this one problem or is this many problems? Do we need to fix one thing, or do we need to fix many things? In the words of Winston Churchill, this pudding has no theme. The human brain gets overwhelmed. So do our political institutions. I learned something very important in my bodybuilding days very early on. You can only focus on one thing at a time. I would work on my biceps, then on my triceps, then on my pectoral muscles, and then I would work different muscles on different days. But I could never do it all at the same time. I could never do bench press and deadlift and chin-ups all at the same time. It's impossible. But that's exactly what we do in the environmental movement. We in the environmental movement, we are pumping biceps, we are pumping triceps, we are pumping quadriceps, and we are pumping pecs and traps and delts and calves and intercostals and serratus. I know the president is saying, I didn't even know the body had so many muscles. It does. It does. The problem is not that we are wearing ourselves out here, but we are wearing the public out. To change the metaphor, our shotgun approach is not working. We are trying to hit all of those targets at once. We need a rifle approach. We need to have one target. I say focus on pollution. Focus on one thing. Everyone gets what pollution is. It is simple to identify and to understand because you can see it coming out of the smokestacks. You see it blanketing the big cities all over the world. Doesn't matter where you look, Los Angeles, London, Beijing, New Delhi, Sao Paulo. Everywhere you see pollution. You see the smog that's killing people. Pollution is enemy number one. Pollution kills the coral reefs. It makes the iceberg melt. It is the very thing that causes climate change, and it makes our temperatures rise. So if we get rid of pollution caused by fossil fuels, we get rid of a lot of the other problems. So why aren't we talking about pollution? Why are we always just talking about climate change? Pollution is the very thing that kills 7 million people every year. That's millions more than the coronavirus has killed. But I'm talking about every year. It's not climate change that is killing the 7 million people. It's pollution that's killing the 7 million people. And it causes other diseases, from heart diseases to pulmonary diseases to strokes, and the list goes on and on. Now here's the thing about focusing on pollution. See, it's not overwhelming because it's all about hope. Even in the movie Predator, when we had this big shootout with this out-of-space creature, this predator, there was a moment where I looked at the leaf and I saw green phosphorus blood dripping down from one leaf to the next. And I said, if it bleeds, we can kill it. See, there was hope. This is what it's about. If pollution created by humans, then we can solve it. Humans can solve it. We can kill it. We can terminate it. You see, there's so many great things, as a matter of fact, going on in the world that I only always hear everyone talking about the negative. The world is coming to an end. I mean, think about all the fantastic stuff that has happened just recently. Like Ford Motor Company announced that the F-150 pickup truck, America's best-selling truck for nearly 45 years, will have an electric version next year. That's huge, because trucks are all about power. For years, electric vehicles were these little, tiny little things. They were weak, they had no power. I would never sit in one of those. Never. But now, they're making the powerful trucks electric. Just to give you an example about power, the current gasoline-powered Ford 150 goes from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.4 seconds. With the electric engine in it, it will go from 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, almost 2 seconds faster. See, now we are talking. That's power. Big vehicles, that's what people like. And it's so popular that Ford already has more than 100,000 orders. And Ford is not the only one. Porsche has an electric, BMW has an electric, Audi has an electric, and many of the other companies have electrics. Those on three-wheelers, girly man cars, may I remind you, there's a real cars. And you know what? There's now even a cargo ship that is fully operated on batteries. And I recently was asked to christen a cargo ship powered by hydrogen. Now this is really a big deal, may I remind you, because the 15 largest container ships in the world pollute more than all of the cars in the world. So we are going in the right direction with the technology. And even FedEx, Amazon, Microsoft, Unilever, Walmart, and about 50 other major corporations are going to be totally carbon neutral by the year 2040, which is 10 years earlier and faster than the Paris Climate Accord has recommended. And Apple is even aiming at 2030. Imagine major corporations being carbon neutral. And in the US, the state of Virginia has mandated that the Dominion Power, an energy company that's providing energy for the entire state, has to be carbon-free by the year 2045. Imagine a power company that will be pollution-free. And the entire nation of Japan vowed to become carbon neutral by the year 2050. And not just Japan, but the whole European Union is going to be carbon neutral by the year 2050. Austria has even promised to be carbon neutral in 2040. Wow. Imagine entire nations will be carbon neutral. And by the year 2045, California, the fifth largest economy in the world, will also be carbon neutral. And there are other positive things that are happening, like ExxonMobil, the shareholders, recently voted in 3 independent directors. Why? Because the company wasn't moving fast enough of getting off fossil fuels because of crappy financial results. According to the Wall Street Journal, some analysts predicted investment on renewable energy will actually exceed oil and gas in the next several years. I mean, isn't that unbelievable? And coal is collapsing as we speak. 12 years ago, 45% of US electricity was generated by burning coal. Now it is below 24% and falling fast. The only one that tried to bring coal back was Donald Trump. But he's also falling fast. See, the thinking is changing all over the world, and we should be talking about that. I mean, we have huge victories in the private sector and in the public sector. So why aren't we talking more about all of those positive things that are happening? Why aren't we conveying some sense of encouragement and hope to the people? That's my question. I mean, if we are in a crisis, isn't it better to encourage people rather than to beat up on them? I remember my son, when he was 10 years old, I watched him playing soccer. And just before he got to the goal, he tripped over the ball. At break, he came to me and he was crying. He said, "Daddy, I screwed up the whole game. I tripped over the ball." So what did I do? I encouraged him. I said, "Patrick, you're a fantastic soccer player. Are you kidding me? You already shot 2 goals. It was one little mistake. You're unbelievable. You guys are going to win." I pumped him up. I didn't attack him in a crisis. That's what people need. And I know the challenges we face remain huge. That 50 global corporations are not the whole of industry. I know that. And I know that we can't relax and we must move forward very aggressively. But people need encouragement, not just threat and despair. See, my concern is that the constant drumbeat of telling people how huge the obstacles are at some point undermines their will to accept and to act. It can defeat the morale of one person or millions. We must not let our communication convince the general public that it is time to surrender when it comes to climate change. Because we need the people. And we will never surrender. We will never give up. We need the people to put the pressure on our elected leaders, on our politicians, to change the status quo and to achieve sweeping change. Because the elected leaders, let me tell you, what I've seen all over the world, they're frozen. Some politicians have told me they don't really want to do any environmental changes because they don't think the people are quite ready. But we all know that's a bunch of horse shit, isn't it? And one of them that I know very well, and I'm not going to mention his name, one of them even said, "I have a hard time going there and doing some environmental stuff because I don't want to lose the support of the oil companies and the coal companies and the car companies." Imagine. I said to him, "You were not elected to be an oil servant or coal servant or gas servant. You were elected to be a public servant. So stop being a coward and do it. Represent the people." No, he said, "Oh, Arnold, you're really tough on me," and all this kind of stuff. I say, I have to be. That's why we need the people to be part of our environmental crusade. Well, just look what happened at the G7 summit. Do you see what happened? Nothing. Nothing. At least nothing of substance. I mean, they could have done at least one thing at the G7 summit when it comes to the environment. They could have said, let's ban cargo ships within the next 10 years. Let's spend all the R&D to change the cargo ships technology. Imagine the amount of pollution we would save in 10 years from now. No, they didn't do anything. Oh, I should be more fair, because they did make a commitment to put $100 billion aside. But they made that commitment already in 2015 at the Paris Agreement. So they recommitted. Huge deal. This is unbelievable, guys. You see what I'm saying? So all of us in the environmental movement, we all agree that we can't wait for those guys. We need the bottom-up approach, the people. We must get the people ready. The people are only real hope. Every great movement in the history enlisted the people. If it's the civil rights movement, or if it is the anti-apartheid movement, or if it is the suffrage movement, or if it is the Indian independence movement, all of those movements were created by people, not by the politicians. Politicians never solved the problems. It was the people. And remember when the Berlin Wall came down? Remember when the Berlin Wall came down and people crossed over for the first time and they were dancing and they couldn't believe it? Did you see any politicians tearing down that wall? I didn't. Did you see any political leaders, public leaders, anyone tearing down that wall? No, I didn't. I saw the people. So as we begin this summit, I ask you to consider, how do we focus our message? And how do we communicate our message so that it is as crisp and as clear as the mountains of Austria? That's what I want. If we all work together and if we communicate together, that wall will come down, I promise you. And the polar bears will be dancing on those icebergs and life will be good. We can terminate pollution. Let's get our message together and let's work together. I have faith in you. I believe in you. We can do it. There is no fate but what we make it for ourselves. So let's make ours a clean, a green, and a healthy fate. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you. Thank you. Thank you.